Hey everybody, welcome to Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. My name is Reed with Best Made Videos. We are a wedding videography company based out of West Seattle, Washington. And today I'm joined by one of my good friends, Jen Owens of Jen Leslie Events. And they are a wedding coordination and planning company. And thank you so much for coming by. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Jen, and I'm the owner and creative director of Jen Leslie Events. And we do wedding planning, design, and florals. And we primarily focus on full service and partial planning. And then we also take on some what we call final coordination. Some people refer to it as day of coordination, but some final planning clients. And then we offer floral services exclusively to our planning clients and take on a small handful of those each year. Not every single client is kind of booking everything.
And Jen and I actually met for the first time last September. My good friend Ryan from high school got married, and you guys did Ryan and Rachel's wedding up at Suncadia. And that was pretty chaotic because of the fires that were going on, which are also kind of going on this time of year. But do you have any insights into that? I don't know if we ever talked about
that was a wild experience and something that as a planner, you know, you can't prepare for wildfires, but you always have a plan B and you always are troubleshooting anything that's going to be thrown your way. So about maybe it was a week and a half before the wedding, we were constantly watching the fire reports, weather reports, the news. Bride and groom actually ended up driving an hour and a half to the venue to check on it and kind of see how the smoke was doing. But anyways, we prepared to completely relocate the wedding to Seattle. They had, I can't remember now, maybe it was like 250 guests. It was a lot of people. And most people were from out of town. They had picked a venue that had lodging on site. So it was a lot of logistics to coordinate. And it was one of those moments where I was so proud of our wedding industry community because I shot off all these emails to people in a panic and just explained to them, I'm like, here's the situation and what's happening. And they were amazing in terms of being sympathetic to the couple, understanding what was happening, you know, bending over backwards to see if we could make it work. And we kind of had this go, no go moment where we finally decided that we were going to move forward with the existing venue that still had some smoke in the air the day of the wedding. But you know what? It ended up being a little breezy. It blew it away. We had the whole resort to ourselves and it turned out perfect. But it was a good challenge for the week before.
It was crazy because, like, so, you know, Ryan and I went to high school, and like he had messaged me like a year before, "Hey, Rachel likes your work. Let's in." So we booked up, and like, you know, was so easy. I mean, they're really nice people. Like, I didn't hear from him until, and then it was like all this chaos. And my wife's, I guess it's someone that is related to my wife was also having a wedding that day. Like 10 miles from them, and it was like a campground kind of thing, because Ryan like told me, like, you know, they were just like outside of whatever the evacuation or you know, the warning zone or whatever, and she was like just on that other side, and they had to relocate. They did everything at Ray's, like it ended up being fine over in like Inner Bay, but like that's how close it was, because I knew too, because we were going to do that wedding also, and then they ended up not having a videographer, but like it just amazed me that like the two weddings, like literally within the same, like both at, you know, quote unquote, like the Suncadia area. And then have you ever dealt with anything like that before?
No, I never had. It was, I mean, we've had smoky summers like we're experiencing right now, you know, inclement weather, whether it's a crazy flash downpour and other issues like that, but never imagining relocating. So it was great. I kind of sat down after that initial phone call and just made a list of, okay, what do we need to do first? How do we attack this problem? And just started powering through. And I'm fortunate to have some really good friends that are also wedding planners. And so I called them and said, here's my situation. This is my approach. You know, do you have any advice? Am I approaching this in the way that you would? Does this sound normal? And they're like, here, try this. And so it was great. I had a lot of help, which was awesome.
Well, that's good. So, you know, hopefully not every wedding needs to be kind of as stressful as that. But so talk kind of about you guys. you said you were doing corporate stuff kind of before you got into weddings. How did you kind of find yourself now as an owner of a wedding event company?
So I graduated from college in 2008, which was not a terrific time to graduate, and was really fortunate to just get a job. I actually was answering the phones at the front desk for a consulting company, and after spending some time there, they put on a lot of events for their employees just because their consultants would be working out at different clients, and they wanted to build and ensure a sense of community kind of with the home company. And then we would also do events for our clients. And so what started off as me getting assigned to work the name tag table or, help with setup eventually grew to, and this is over 7 years. So this was not an overnight thing, but eventually grew to managing over $500,000 in event money that we spent every year. I had a team of, I think, 5, and we planned over 35 events a year. So I just dove in and fell more and more in love with it and kept kind of raising my hand for more responsibility and events. But then after probably about year 5, I started to realize that a lot of the corporate events were exactly the same. Some of the nuances would change, but it was really missing the creativity that I longed for. And I think by this time I had gotten married and maybe helped with a couple friends' weddings. Just, they figured, oh, you've done events for work, maybe you can help out with mine, and loved it. And I grew up with parents who own their own business for a majority of my life. They owned a Hallmark store, actually. And so I always knew I would own something. I thought it would be a bakery, actually. I'm not a baker, but I wanted to just own the bakery and eat the pastries. Hence my coffee right now from a bakery. So I thought it would be like a brick and mortar shop. And then when I kind of started to think about a service-based career and events and just how much I enjoy them, it was something I started to pursue really aggressively. And I actually worked both jobs for just about 2 years so that it's hard in a seasonal based business that you really have to be working all year long to build that up. And it's not something I think that you can just start one day and, quit your nice, secure, good paying job with insurance and all those things. So I was, it took a long time, but I'm really grateful for that time because I learned a lot. I was able to network a ton, and it kept me sharp actually for both jobs because it benefited the corporate events I was continuing to plan and then opened me up to a lot of the wedding specific vendors that I hadn't worked with earlier. So yeah, it was a good, nice, long, slow road.
No, that's interesting. It's funny how kind of similar our stories are. I also graduated in 08 in terrible time.
Yeah.
And I was in news, which was like even worse, and everybody was laid off. And I also did kind of that dual role. It took me, I think it was like 9 or 10 months to kind of transition out. But it is true. Like I hear about people all the time, like, oh, I'm starting a, wedding, whatever company. And, they'll start it like in June. And it's like, no.
Right.
Like, you really need to start that like in, January or at least, have that year to kind of build up because, yeah, especially if you're doing wedding planning, like couples aren't looking hopefully for a planner in June, they're looking for one or maybe, for the next June, but not like, oh, I need one in a month,
Yeah.
Ideally. It's also funny. I just did a corporate event yesterday, and it's funny how like accustomed I get to like having like good planners now at weddings and like have everything taken care of. And then like I go do like a corporate event that's also planned and like nothing is thought through the way that like a wedding would be, like they had like a TV that didn't work and the audio didn't work and all this stuff. And you're like, if that was a wedding, like that wouldn't be that way, right? Or you would have somebody that was kind of, so what kind of lessons did you take from that corporate world into now, just like managing the people or what kinds of things?
Gosh, so many. I was really lucky that the consulting company I worked for put on a lot of creative events, or at least gave me a lot of freedom to be creative. So not only were we addressing very high demanding client needs, working within a budget, managing vendors, all the things that are applicable to weddings, but how to be creative with the resources, and execute well, which transferred great to weddings. So I would say some big lessons. We learned to be really scrappy and do things in-house. I don't think they would be mad if I said this, but they were a very frugal company. And so we just knew how to negotiate where we could, again, make things in-house or build them in-house if we needed to, and then really work with those vendors to make sure that what the clients were wanting, or even if it was the GM or executives that were overseeing the employee event, that all of their needs and expectations were getting met as well. I mean, even simple things as I was responsible for running a lot of the AV and tech for some of our more business focused meetings. And I remember some days my palms just sweating because I, maybe just had to press a button a couple times. It wasn't a big deal. But at the time you're like, gosh, I better not screw this up in front of 300 people. This is a lot of pressure. And so even simple things about knowing how to work mics and PowerPoint decks and some minor AV equipment totally comes in handy in fluke situations at weddings where something occurs, and I at least have a lot more confidence now in how to address those than I would have if I'd never experienced that. So that's kind of a long roundabout way to answer your question.
No, that's good. And then talk about your wedding. What was that like?
My wedding. So, if I'm being really honest, I probably had more fun at my sister's wedding than my wedding. My husband and I had a really short engagement, not because, he waited a long time to propose, and I really wanted to get married outdoors. So he proposed Memorial Day weekend, and we ended up getting married October 15th. So we had about a 4.5 month engagement. Meanwhile, I was also planning my biggest event for work of the year right before my wedding. So it was a very stressful time. I was my own planner. I did have a day of coordinator, which was wonderful. She's a dear friend of mine, and I ended up being the day of coordinator for her wedding. So that was really special. But it was a little challenging. You get exposed to a lot of beautiful weddings. What is gorgeous from a design aesthetic, but then when it's your own and you have to shell out the money for that, it's like, oh man, I really need to decide, do I want to invest in a really nice photographer or better chairs at the venue? It's like, okay, I would rather have great photos at the end of the day, even if they are of these not so pretty chairs. So my biggest takeaway is that I didn't do a very good job relaxing leading up to my wedding because I was the planner and so involved, and I had a hard time letting go. And so that's actually something that I have incorporated now into my process with my own clients, is guiding them on how to start relaxing. Again, whether we're doing full service planning or day of, and it's not just relaxing in terms of letting go of the details and letting us take over, because hopefully that's why they've hired a planner, and hopefully they're doing that no matter what. But just personally, like getting prepared for family to come into town. You have a lot of beauty appointments, and just really enjoying the moment because it goes so fast. And don't get me wrong, I loved my wedding. It was a great day, but it felt more like just a very busy event as opposed to like, oh my gosh, it's this one magical day. Whereas at my sister's, not being the center of attention, I was able to relax a little bit more. I mean, I still planned it. I did her flowers. I was still very involved, but I was able to kind of kick back a little bit more than when my husband and I were on the spotlight.
No, I was the same way. I was very involved with like the videography and everything. And, we were trying to get a live stream. My grandpa was in like a nursing home down in Oregon. So I was trying to like get the live stream. And so like we roll in and like, of course it's not working. And I had my buddy who had come up from California to like help like monitor that. And we're like trying to get it set up. And Rebecca Grant did our wedding. And she's like, Reed,
awesome.
like, you need to come sign your marriage certificate like right now, because we're like getting ready to walk down the aisle. And I'm like, ah. And so, yeah, you definitely want to be like present on your day and not like, that was my big takeaway too, is like, I probably could have been a little more present.
Yeah.
I also like got an email and booked a wedding on my wedding day. So I probably am like a terrible example all around, but I
will say, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I will say the one cool thing my husband Brett and I did and I can't remember if this was his idea or if we heard it from somebody, but we decided to, and this sounds so cheesy, but we decided to hold hands the whole reception. We had over 200 guests at our wedding. It was a very casual kind of cocktail style reception. And by actually physically holding hands, it allowed us to stay together the whole night. So we actually experienced it together. I mean, of course, we were like hugging people and saying hi and things, but we stayed with each other as we went around and said hi to people. And I think had we not done that, I probably would have not seen him for half the night. We would have been off in our own corners. And that was something that was, now looking back, like really special. And I'm glad that we kind of, again, took that time to be present and together, because it woid not be as fun if I was like off by myself.
No, I love that. I think that that's so funny. I've never heard of that. I think that's awesome. You should get like a I don't know, like a handcuff or something, but that might be a bad idea. But I think that's an awesome idea, because like people get bombarded and then you're kind of separate, and then, or maybe you're talking to somebody you don't want to talk to.
Right. You can nudge them, be like, come on, let's go.
So relaxation, being present, that's kind of what you've taken now. Cause I always think it's interesting, like what people learn from their own wedding now that they incorporate into, so that's the big...
Yes, that would be a big one. And I would have given myself a little bit more time to kind of plan and organize it. And we were moving. I mean, it was like all sorts of life things happening all at once. It was just too much looking back.
It is a lot of couples that I'm emailing with that like are also like, oh, hey, we just bought a house, so we'll get you next week. And you're like, wow, like you're really doing a lot like right now. That's a lot. So then, talk a little bit about your husband and your family. I know you just had a little baby a little while ago.
We did, or I did, I guess. Yeah. I never know what to say with that, by the way. Do you say we or I? I don't know. So Brett and I have been married for almost 7 years now, and we actually met in high school. So I met him when I was 14, but we didn't start dating till both of us were done with college. And in January, we had our son, Blake, and being a full-time mom and a full-time business owner is a really fun new challenge. It is super hard, I'm not going to lie, but it's amazing. And we got really lucky with a very chill, easygoing baby. So luckily, it's been pretty smooth sailing so far.
That was probably a good time, January, if to time that out.
Yeah, we had trouble getting pregnant. So we tried for over a year. And at a certain point, at the beginning, we thought, oh, let's coordinate it around wedding season. And then as time went on and we weren't getting pregnant, I was like, forget this. Family's more important. We're going to have the kid when we have the kid. And then I'm like, oh, it's such a perfect God timing thing. Cause then at the end, it worked out that I had him in the off season and was able to still, work all of my weddings in 2017, while being pregnant, and then do all of them this year, and having him at grandma's and lots of good help to help me out.
What did you go to school for?
I went to school. I had to think about that. I went to school for marketing.
And so has that played a role, obviously?
Yeah. I went to a small liberal arts school in California called Azusa Pacific University. And so while my marketing degree has been very useful, marketing has changed so much since I graduated. The huge influx in social media, and I would be curious as to what a marketing degree, or what they would be teaching for a marketing degree today as opposed to when I was going to school. So some things don't feel as applicable, but I was glad to get a really good foundation of business and marketing from my college experience.
Talk about what kinds of things do you do when you're not raising a family, and there's probably not a lot
What is free time, Reed?
Yeah.
I don't know. No. Well, what I want to be doing, hanging out with my girlfriends. I love going wine tasting in Woodinville. We're a pretty active family, so we like to go hiking or be on the water. In the winter, I love to snow ski. In the summer, pretty much being on the water or on a boat at any time is A-okay in my book. So just trying to be outside. And I also enjoy reading, but it's turned into one of those things that I kind of power read on vacation and read as many books as I can, because I love just kind of being lazy and enjoying that in my downtime. But it's a little bit harder throughout the rest of the year.
Is it a tough work-life balance right now in the summer? How do you kind of deal with, I mean, that's an obvious question, but how do you kind of deal with that work-life balance?
I try to be as organized and scheduled as I can. So now with a family, coordinating childcare is kind of something we look at. Like, let's say we're going to look at the week, my husband and I, and kind of talk about what we have coming up. I mean, that's first and foremost. And then, making sure I have time to prepare and work on all my client work as well as the business side of things. Obviously, client work takes priority in the height of the season. And then in the off season, I like to focus a lot more on some of our business projects. But it is a constant balance and it's never perfect. And it's something that is what I've been learning with a growing child is that as soon as I think I've figured it out, he is on to the next developmental challenge or thing. And so then I've got to, refigure everything out already. Like we're getting ready to baby proof, for example. So now I'm thinking, okay, I can't have him in his little play area content while I respond to some emails because he's going to crawl away and I need to be paying attention to that. So it's an ever evolving process.
I will say though, I think you guys are good about kind of that communication and that planning, right? At least from the vendor side, when it comes to like weddings, both you and Stephanie, your associate, that we've had weddings this summer. Like Joe had one. I was out of town, and like I literally didn't even know they had a planner until it was like the day before, and I was just kind of looking over everything, and it was like, one of my questions is like, oh, best person to contact day of. And like, oh, our wedding planner. And I was like, how have we never heard from them? And we booked with, I'm talking like 9 months of like that we've been booked. And like, how have we, but it's like you guys like, it's always keeping people apprised. And like, you do have to have that organization, right? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, definitely. So I am proud to say we definitely have some very strong processes in place, especially those last couple of months leading up to the wedding. Not only finalizing things with our couple, but getting all of the vendors up to speed. And there's kind of this fine balance too, because you typically have some outstanding items with the bride and groom as it's getting closer to the wedding, but you want to start notifying the vendors of the timeline, key elements that are occurring, but you also don't want to have to go back to them because you have so many outstanding issues. You want to make sure it's as current and relevant as possible. So we try to follow our process from the day that they book, whether that's a full service client and we're kind of helping them with everything from start to finish, or if it's a final coordination client and we start working with them about 3 months before the wedding and we walk them through, this is our process. This is what we're going to do. This is when we're going to communicate out to the vendors. And then, my hope is that for vendors that we're continuing to work with over and over, they get used to that, familiar, they come to expect it and know that, yes, we are going to reach out with that timeline and we'll have specific questions for you. We will have already reviewed your contract that you signed with the couple ahead of time. So we're not walking in dark to the situation. Like we're prepared and ready and excited to execute a really fun wedding day.
What kinds of clients do you find that are attracted to you guys or that you tend to work with a lot? What kinds of people or aesthetics or however you want to kind of take that?
We've been really fortunate that we've attracted some really great clients, and then friends of theirs, siblings of theirs have been interested in us as well. So that's been amazing. But overall, I would say our clients are very much in love. They really want to be married. This is like the next step in their relationship. They understand the seriousness, I guess, of what it means to make that lifelong commitment to someone. At least that's really important to me, to work with a couple who recognizes that. And then outside of that, I would say they definitely have a good eye for design, and at least if they're not exactly sure what they want their wedding to look like, they have a small vision or they know what they don't like. Maybe that can be just as helpful as knowing what you do like. And they are usually professionals with busy careers, successful. They like to have a lot of fun. I hear a lot of times when I'm interviewing potential clients, describe your ideal wedding and how you want it to be. And they always like, fun. I want a fun wedding. I'm like, okay, well, let's dive into that. What does fun mean to you? So they like to, and that doesn't just mean party either. I mean, that can be fun in the food, that can be fun in the decor, and it can also be, awesome cocktails and a really fun band or things like that. So yeah. How else would I describe them? We've just been really lucky to get some awesome. I tell people that I'm a wedding planner, and they're like, "Oh, you must have bridezillas." No, I've never had one, and I really think that speaks to our sales process. I mean, we interview each potential client. They interview us when we're having that consultation. We've said no sometimes when we don't feel like it's a good fit, whether from a personality or design aspect. And we try to make the experience really enjoyable for them. Wedding planning can be extremely overwhelming. So it's important to approach it step by step and kind of compartmentalize pieces so that day one, you're not picking the color of your napkins. That's 20 steps down. I mean, probably more than that, but that's really far down the road. And a lot of times couples come to us feeling overwhelmed, like they need to know all of that. So we try to be that expert, that guide for them, walk them through the process, and just make it a really fun and enjoyable experience. Because this is hopefully a once in a lifetime season that you're in when you're engaged. Sometimes it's for a year, sometimes it's just a handful of months, and you should not have the experience that I had and be stressed. You should enjoy it and love it and, really treasure that time, because it's kind of unlike any other time in your dating or relationship with your significant other.
It is. It's funny. I get Brian's working on our deck right now outside, and he always, whenever he sees me, he's like, "Oh, tell me what crazy story," or like you said, and like we don't, generally, right? If you're a professional and doing it, and like you're able to, you work with people that you feel like you're going to kind of mesh with, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's not like a peg in a square hole or whatever that saying is, that you're finding someone that you mesh with, right?
I think the crazy stories come from the guests, usually towards the end of the evening. But that's normally when, I don't know, the funny situations come up that you laugh about later.
Talk to me. I always am curious with different vendors, whether it's planning or florists or whatever, common kind of pitfalls you see, or things that you're constantly like, you see clients like are easy fixes or things you could educate them about. Like, what are some common things that you are finding that like you wish more couples knew or avoided or did?
Ooh, that's a good one. Creating your budget and at least attempting to stick to it is probably one of the hardest pieces of planning a wedding. And we spend a lot of time, especially with our full service clients, educating around, what does an average DJ cost and what can I expect for XYZ decor that they've maybe described to us a lot of times. And I fall into this too sometimes, where you see something beautiful on Pinterest or in a magazine or on Instagram and think, oh, okay, like I could totally recreate that at my wedding. And I wish sometimes there was a button that showed the price tag sticker, because I think we would all be shocked at what those things cost. So we work a lot of times on not only creating the budget, but like I said, sticking to it and making sure that we're checking in throughout the planning process. If for some reason priorities have changed and they're interested in adding something else, then we'll talk about, okay, well, where are we going to pull from in order to make that happen? Or if you want to do both, then, this is how much your budget's going to increase by. And let's kind of talk about that. Another thing that we experience a lot is couples who have booked their venue before they've hired us. And I'm not completely opposed to that, but I think having a planner to walk you through that booking process, there's been a lot of times where we've talked later on and the clients have been surprised that the venue is going to nickel and dime them for things that in their sales meeting, we're like, oh yeah, we can do that for you. We can do that for you. And they were just falling in love with the venue. They weren't thinking specifically that actually that lighting that's hanging up and that draping around the ceremony area is all additional. And so we like to be there with them to walk them through that portion. Sometimes they also don't realize that if your contract says that you're done by midnight, that usually means that the wedding actually needs to be done at 11 and all of your vendors need to be out by midnight. So sometimes having someone at the very beginning to help clarify that just makes it easier down the line, because I would hate for them to then, let's say, book a DJ or a band that's going to play till midnight, and then we find out, okay, no, actually they can only play until 11, and then, you've paid for additional time that you're not going to need. So those two things are what we see that our clients are needing help with most often. There's like thousands of other things in between that we can help them with.
Yeah, I was one of our weddings over the weekend. I think I was talking to, I can't remember if it was the photographer or another one of the bridesmaids, about a lot of couples now finding like newer venues or places that are, that are trying to book, and they're like, yeah, like kind of promise the stars, like, oh yeah, we can do all this stuff. And then when it comes time, like maybe they've gotten more popular, or it just now the actual money's coming in, and like they got to figure out like, okay, how are we going to, break even this summer? And then it's like, oh, these extra chairs, or, the table is an extra $50 or whatever, where it's, like you said, having that planner to kind of like ask those questions that they don't know, because you don't know, like I wouldn't know what to ask, like, I mean, Rebecca helped me, we didn't know what to ask. And then the other thing, is like what things cost, and like people have no idea. And it's funny because like, I think, I don't know if it's wedding specific or whatever, but like people like have this idea of like what they think things are going to cost. And then like, maybe that's correct or it's way off, but like, I don't know, like we're working on our deck right now, and we need to put like this under rain, I don't know, something to catch the water. And our contractor was like, oh, it's like really expensive. And so I'm thinking like, it's like $1,000 or whatever. It's $2,500 for this thing, right?
Oh,
but
dang.
like we don't know, like you don't know what that costs, right?
Right.
And it's the same thing with like a videographer, or like what does a wedding coordinator cost? Like I have no idea. And then you find out, this is arranged or whatever. But like, it's people like trying to educate, or thinking that they know what it's going to be, and then trying to educate them. I mean, I imagine that's got to be like a constant. You're constantly kind of trying to educate people on things.
Yes, education is a huge part of our job, and we are educating on sometimes similar things or different things with each couple that we're working with, because when you're like a great example by saying expensive in the deck contractor world, that means one thing to him, and to you it's something totally different. So we deal with that a lot. And I sometimes feel like I'm the Debbie Downer of the group, and sometimes in some of our planning meetings, but I like to be a little bit more of that practical voice of reason that's going to come in and give you the options, because it is all about options. And that's what makes wedding planning tricky, is you have to make 1,000 decisions, and you're making them with someone else who could have very different ideas of what they want the day to look like. And so we can help eliminate the thousands of options down to 100 options or whatever, and then continue down that path with guidance and, peppering in our opinion on specific vendors that we've worked with and experiences. And so that is, I think, really invaluable.
Yeah, when Reverend Ray was on the podcast, he was talking about like how important he thinks it is for that couple to kind of go through that experience together. Like you said, of like you have to like meld everything together on that day to like make it be a thing, whether it's, aesthetics or personalities or families or budgets, it's like all these, 100 different things of two different people kind of coming together. Now that was interesting, that, and you're kind of like having to guide that ship in. It's like these, things converge. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with. Talk about your first wedding that you, helped coordinate, what kind of once you were Jen Leslie Events.
Oh, okay.
Not like the friend that,
Yeah. That was just like the church wedding. My first wedding, I got really lucky. And it's funny now because at the time I didn't realize what A-list vendors I was working with for this particular wedding, but it was a friend of a coworker's, and it was a wedding at Soto Park. I worked with Laurel McConnell Photography. I worked with Finch and Thistle for florals. I mean, it was a stunning wedding, amazing details. And, here I am a little naive thinking, oh, all my weddings are going to be like this with fantastic vendors, great details. That's not always the case, but I loved it. I actually had my sister come and help me. She was actually my assistant for, I think, the first 2 years, and was awesome. And had her come and help me. We did all the setup and oversaw the logistics of that day. I would probably cringe if I looked at the timeline that I created back then compared to where it is now. I mean, it's definitely, this job is a continuous learning curve, which is one of the reasons I really enjoy it. But it went off very smoothly, which I was excited about. And the couple now has 2 beautiful kids. They live here in Seattle, and it's fun to stay in touch with them a little bit. Even, I think that was back in, 2012 or 2013. It's a handful of years now.
Yeah, I love being able to, keep in contact with everybody. I know that's I do think it's one of the best things about social media and everything nowadays is being able to stay connected with all these people and see one of my couple, she just had a baby from whatever, and you're it's just really cool to see. And I think there are a lot of people that, say bad things about social media, a lot of different opinions, but I think that is one of the coolest things is kind of having this living world that you're kind of growing, in terms of clients and relationships. Does your husband help you out at all, or does he help carry anything?
I have a rule that I am only, and I made this rule up. This is not him at all, but I have a rule that I'm only allowed to ask him for help for 2 events for the whole year, because I don't want him to resent it. I mean, he has a fantastic full-time job. He works really hard for our family. So I don't feel like he should be burdened having to help with my stuff. Plus I have a team for that, and that's what they're there for. So every now and then, last season, my last wedding of the year, I was super pregnant and we had to install this huppah, and I just didn't want to be up on a ladder, drilling the huppah together. So he was amazing and came and helped me for that. So he definitely jumps in every now and then, but I don't want it to be a regular thing.
Yeah, I drag Dorothy to the wedding shows, and they're always like, "Oh, are you a husband and wife team?" And it's like, "No, she's working. She works. I can't ask that much." Talk a little bit more about your team and kind of how you guys approach, kind of the weddings and the couples.
Yeah, so I have 1 part-time employee, Stephanie, and we have 4 subcontractors that split their time assisting Stephanie's weddings and my weddings. So I primarily focus on our full service and partial planning clients, and Stephanie focuses on our final coordination clients, and then she'll assist me with a couple of our really big weddings of the year. And then I am looking to hire another part-time planner for next year. So if anyone is listening and interested, give me a call.
Talk about having to, I know it's difficult, kind of managing a team like that. Do you find it's easy? Do you find the same challenges I do?
Yeah. And this just happened last weekend, when one of your team members has a wedding that you're not there physically for, there's a little bit of, I hope everything's going great. But I consider it a great success when I don't get any phone calls, of what do we do with this or what's happening? And then when we sync up maybe the Monday after or the Tuesday after and just hear all the updates, good and bad, behind the scenes things that happened, it's a feeling of I get really proud of my team and how well they did in tackling certain issues. And we spend a lot of time in training, and one of the tricky things about being a service-based business where it's solely reliable on you. I get asked this question a lot, what happens if you get sick or you break your leg or something like that? So it's amazing to have someone that, in all of our monthly one-on-one meetings, we are cross-training each other on the specifics of each of our weddings. So just in case something terrible was to happen, knock on wood, that we are both prepped and ready. We both know where all of our files are for each of our clients. We have that structure in place, which I didn't have a few years ago, and it's really nice to have now. So I really love having a team. I had missed working with, quote unquote coworkers. I missed the collaboration element of that. And I would love to have more down the line. It's, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's always kind of scary to go back and look at like kind of your past. Like I think about like the first couple. We just had the second wedding I ever had. They just had their anniversary like last week, and I think back and it's like I didn't even know. Like I think I knew like where it was and like what time to show up, and
right.
I didn't know anything. And like nowadays, it's like vendor lists and what's your social media and who's your hashtag and website and where is the this and that and kind of all the specifics. And like, do you ever like think about like you got really lucky sometimes?
Yes, definitely. I totally believe in the fake it till you make it. But even beyond that, I think you have to just show confidence. And especially as a planner, you are going to get thrown a number of crazy nuances and situations like, fires in Eastern Washington or guests that have been cut off that aren't leaving the bar like they should be. I've had party crashers. There's all sorts of things. So you just have to be confident in yourself and what you're doing and go for it. Even if on the inside you're freaking out and have no idea, it just, you learn from every wedding that you're a part of. And I think being in this industry longer and longer, I feel more and more comfortable doing that. And it takes time. And I'm grateful for the clients that took a chance on me at the beginning, for sure.
I would like to hear a little bit more about some of these close calls or some of these interesting. Is there maybe one or two that you could share, kind of funny tidbits?
We've had two that come to mind. There was a Greek wedding that I did a couple years ago, and they really wanted to smash plates on the ground and had these specific plates either purchased or flown in or something like that. And I knew that the venue was not going to be pleased with ceramic plates being thrown on their beautiful hardwood floors. And I luckily wasn't made aware of it until I think the day of or the day before, because if I would have needed to notify the venue. I mean, I need to do my due diligence in that. So anyways, it was kind of one of those crazy situations where we talked about the repercussions. I made them aware, like, this is what's going to happen. And they did it anyways. And venue got really upset and we had to kind of address that. And it put me in a tough place, to be honest, because you want to do what's right for the client and you want to come through for them. And this was something that was very important to them, both culturally and just traditionally from other family members' weddings that they had done. But I also want to maintain amazing relationships with all of our vendors, especially venues. And so that one was tricky. And we had some good phone calls and emails afterwards to kind of resolve that as best we could. And they ended up paying the fine to fix the floor and all of that. And then another one was last year. It was right before Halloween weekend. So we were actually at Soto Park and there must have been some Halloween parties nearby because this guy tried to come in and use the restroom, and we had security out front. But somehow he had the security guard had let him come at least up to the upper stairs, which I still to this day don't understand why, because he was clearly in a costume. Like he's not a wedding guest. And so I was kind of the next line of defense. He was this bigger guy and I just had to kind of stand my ground, and he was not saying very nice things and not in a clear state of mind, shall we say. And it was just one of those situations where I knew that if I let it get to me emotionally and got angry or frustrated or even just pissed off that he was being so rude to me personally and the things that I was saying, I knew that I wasn't going to get anywhere, and that he wasn't actually mad at me. He was just trying to get in to go to the bathroom. And anyways, just funny things that you never know what the day or night is going to bring to you, but you just got to be prepared and keep your cool and address party crashers whenever they come up.
We just had a couple back in June. It wasn't as big as the floor, but they had, they did the sand ceremony and people pour the sand in the jar.
Yeah. But
they had this paint and they wanted to pour it on this canvas.
Oh boy.
But it was the thickest like paint ever. Like it wasn't like, oh, we like tossed this thing. I mean, this was like goo, like, and they poured it on, and it was like gray and like blue. It was like weird, like weird colors, but it looked kind of cool. But then like you just see it like pouring down the thing and like all over this tablecloth that like I guess they were supposed to put like some paper or something, and they hadn't. And so and then they had it hanging above their cake. And then it was all drippy and all. So like it dripped like
Did
all
it drip
over.
on the cake?
No, it was like behind it, but it like dripped. They had like hung it on the wall, and then it like dripped down the wall. It was with Betty Globo was there, and so they had like all of these like really nice photos that she had taken of them like printed, and then they had like this, the sand painting, whatever, and it was just dripping on all this. I was like, didn't you guys like want to try that out ahead of time?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
did we test this?
I was like, you guys have only been planning this for 2 years, but what is like your biggest success or one of your favorite weddings? Maybe of this, it could be of this season, or it could be of
this season. I can think of two, one in the past and then one this season. The one that I'm really proud of, I guess, from this year is one that we just did a few weeks ago. We had, I think, 15 or 18 vendors. It was a huge team that I was helping oversee, and it was only a 4-hour wedding. It was extremely short from the start of the ceremony to the end of it, for a number of reasons that I won't get into. But we're always sticking to our timeline as best as possible, but we were huffing it for that one. There was just no downtime in between what was occurring. We unfortunately had some catering setbacks, not because of the caterer, but the oven at the venue broke down. So dinner was delayed. I mean, just everything that could have happened did happen. And yet we still had a great wedding. At the end of the night, the family was so appreciative. They had a great time, as all family members do. And the best moment was I was helping them load their lawn games into the car and like leftover booze and stuff like that at the end of the night. And there were a couple family members in the car, and they were going off to an after party. And at the end, they were like, Jen, Jen, Jen. They just started chanting, and it just put a huge smile on my face that we did what we needed to do. We came through for the family, which is what we always want to make sure happens. And it just went off really smooth considering all the logistical bumps that came up. And then the other one I'm thinking about in the past was up at Rosario on Orcas Island. We've done a lot of weddings up there, and I love island weddings and mini destination weddings. I grew up on Bainbridge Island, so I'm very comfortable with ferry schedules and kind of the logistics around all of that. But this one was on 4th of July. We had a really large wedding group, as well as like wedding party, as well as the number of guests. And we had a lot of transitions. The ceremony, cocktail hour, reception, and dancing were in 4 different locations. So to get everybody moved, we had, I think, a 10-piece band for that one. I don't have time to go into everything, but there was just a lot that happened. And again, a favorite moment of that night was at one point, the groom is hoisted up like on the shoulders of his buddies in the middle of the dance floor, wearing his white button-down shirt from his tux and American flag shorts. And he has an American flag around his shoulders, or maybe at one point he was like twirling it in the air. And it was just one of those hilarious moments. Like, he's having the best night of his life. And I'm, so happy that we were able to make this happen for them on a holiday that them and their friends are never going to forget. It was a really fun one.
Yeah, 4th of July, that would have to be kind of a tricky date to plan, and with schedules and ferries and stuff too. I couldn't imagine that. I know we did one on like Memorial Day, and it was the ferry, and it was like, you don't necessarily always think about that, and then that's why you have to have a planner that can kind of help figure that out. So we had talked a little bit off camera or off microphone, I guess, about we're kind of like midway through the season right now. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of how your season's shaping up, and then kind of how you try to build your season out in terms of weddings and the number of clients you guys take on?
Sure. So I take on 10 weddings a year, and in fact, next year I'm going to be reducing that a little bit just to have more bandwidth to help with my growing staff. And then our team members take on anywhere from 5 to 10 weddings as well, just based on bookings and kind of how many people are interested. So I love that we are busy. We have, a full schedule, but we're also not killing ourselves and we're not experiencing burnout. That's been something that's been really important to me from the beginning. This is a very physically demanding job on wedding days. It's a very mentally demanding job leading up to it and the planning process all year long. And it's a lot of nights meeting with clients as well as the wedding weekend. So I want to make sure that I'm giving 100% to each of my clients. And I just can't do that to 20, 30 couples. I would be crazy and it would be a disservice to them. So I like that we are a little more boutique in that aspect. And I'm excited as we bring on more wedding planners that they will be able to devote that time and attention to a smaller group of clients as well and kind of continue the model that we've created.
Yeah, we just had Rebecca for like the 3-month, kind of thing. I couldn't imagine, she was sick of us after 3 months. It's a lot. But I mean, you really are with them through kind of like every step of that. I mean, I just I know we were a lot to deal with, and I couldn't imagine, obviously probably not all couples are as crazy as we are, but it's nice. But you get to, you really get to kind of go on that journey with them, right?
Yeah. And kind of to what you were talking about earlier, the end of wedding season is always a little bittersweet for me. I'm very excited to see the weddings executed, everything that we've talked about finally coming together. But I get sad at the end of the night that I'm no longer going to be talking with them once a month or on the phone or getting emails from them. And I've definitely built some great relationships with some of my clients. So I always tell them that I think the planner is one of the luckiest in terms of vendors because we get to spend the most amount of time with the couple. And I'm always really honored to be there to witness their wedding and kind of that special occasion because I do know them and I do feel a little bit more like a friend attending than, just someone that you're showing up for on the day of.
Yeah, I legit went through withdrawal last
Yes.
November. I really did. And I was sitting around and I was I don't know what to do with my time now. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for coming in today. I know we've known each other for a while. I really appreciate you coming in and sitting down so we could chat. If people want to learn more about you guys and your planning and what you guys do and what you offer, what would you have them do?
Yeah, so 2 best places to find us. Instagram, number 1, we are at Jen Leslie Events, and that's Jen with 1 N and Leslie, Leslie, and events is plural. I get asked that a lot. And then on our website, if you are interested in learning more, we have a ton of information about our services. You can even fill out our contact form, which will shoot an email over to me, and then I'll follow up with our service packet that has even more good details. And our website's just jenleslieevents.com. So Instagram and online are definitely the best places. And then we'd love to set up coffee or drinks and get to know you a little better.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This has been another episode of Get to Know Your Wedding Pro. Check back next week for another wedding vendor interview. Thanks so much.
Thanks.